This is the day that the Lord has made, and we will rejoice and be glad in it. We are so grateful to God for His goodness and His mercy. We are grateful to God for each and every person that is joining, and um, that is joining. I was going to say we'll be joining, but you're joining. We're grateful to God for you on this morning. Happy Saturday! Happy Saturday to everybody. Hope you are well. Come on in the room. Come on in the room. Welcome to session number 4. Good morning, Leah from San Diego. Good morning. Welcome to session number 4, 4-hour e-course on prayer conversations. Today we're talking about prayer and mental health. Going to ask those of you that are coming in to be sure to share this video, invite and tag some people to join us. Those of you that are watching, let us know where you're watching from. Drop a line. We want to jump right into things, but just for a few moments, we do want to give greetings and salutations to those that are watching. So let us know where you're watching from. Drop us a line. Good morning, Pamela Smith. How are you this morning? Good morning, Jennifer from Monrovia. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I'm so grateful to God for His goodness and His mercy. I'm grateful for everything that we have experienced up until now. This has been a phenomenal course. On the other night, we talked about praying for answers. It was so plain that I don't think nobody had a question after it was over. It was so phenomenal. Bishop Kwesi Smith shared a lot of wisdom, a lot of nuggets. And there will be a recap, but just a couple of things that he shared. He said, prayer is not just what you do, but prayer is a place that you go. We have to be disciplined to pray. And he talked about the hypocrite and that being a person that lives lower than their criticism. He discussed there's a reward for prayer. And there's a public anointing because of private time spent in prayer, and so many wisdom pieces that he shared with us on the other night. And so I'm so grateful to God for it, and I'm grateful to each and every one of you, and I pray that you were as blessed as I was from the session on the other night. We're going to move into today's session. Again, we're grateful to everyone that's joining us, that's viewing. And we're going to jump right into today's session. We have 3 phenomenal guest lecturers that will share with us on today. So I'm going to ask that you would brace yourselves, prepare yourselves, get your notepads, your Bibles, your books. I have my notepad, my Bible here with me. So if you see me looking down, I'm not asleep. I'm not paying attention, but I'm taking some notes. All right. I'm taking notes. When I don't have glasses on, my eyelids appear much smaller than they are, so it looks and appears as if I'm asleep. So I'm not asleep. I'm just taking good notes. But I'm so grateful to God for these women of God that will share with us on today. First, I'm going to bring Miss Lauren Spearman to join us on this morning. And she's going to introduce herself, and she's going to share for a few moments, and then we will invite the rest of our guest lecturers and panelists on for today. God bless you, Lauren.
Hello, how are you? It is such an honor and a privilege to be here and to share with your audience and your platform. So I thank you so much for that consideration. I surely count it all joy. As you said, my name is Lauren Spearman. I am a motivational speaker out of St. Louis, Missouri. And this is something that is a very powerful subject to me as far as prayer and mental health, because they were both very instrumental components of my story. So just to give you a little bit of background about myself, back in 2017, I went through a tremendous period of loss. There was a 10-year relationship that I was in that ended. And I had some challenges with my son being recently diagnosed with autism around that time as well. As a result of the relationship ending, there were also extreme financial disparities and challenges as well, where the home I was in, I lost, the car that we shared, I lost. So I was at a point where I literally was nowhere but at the bottom where I could look up. And I felt as though God had forgotten about me. And I really, really slipped into depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress and syndrome, even because there was a lot of unresolved issues from my childhood that I didn't realize until they came bubbling to the surface when I lost everything else. So I was truly at a position where I felt like God had stripped everything away from me. And there was even a point where I had turned my back from the church. So at that moment, I wasn't immediately receptive to the prayer aspect that I needed and to the relationship and connection with God that I needed. So I had to seek licensed therapy in order to start to rebuild myself and reopen myself back up into receiving the love and the grace of God. Because at that moment, I could not see it, I could not connect to it. So I definitely like to tell everyone that I know that I love Jesus as well as I love therapy, because I know that when it comes to mental health, sometimes it just can't be as simple as praying it away when a person is not able to be open to receive the prayer. Sometimes you are in such a zombie-like state, going through routines and going through motions, that a prayer can just go through one ear and out the other. When I tell you that I lost everything, um, almost up to and including my complete mind, there were days that I did not shower. For days on end, I did not get out of bed. I did not change out of my pajamas. I could not effectively care for myself nor my children. So I had to resolve those issues first, and I had to get to a place where I was open and receptive to receive God. And it truly took my village that I had surrounding me, a tribe of covering people that were praying for me from afar, because I had isolated myself. I had become a hermit. So they prayed for me from afar. I went to therapy sessions weekly and spoke to a therapist, where I was able to dig deep and address that inner child of mine that was still hurting from things that she had experienced as a young child, that was still operating out of insecurity and rejection. And once I got to that open place, then I was able to receive the word of God and hear the voice of God. And one of the things that God told me was that the house that I was in was representing my life. And so God could not just come in and do a renovation on me, because my foundation was faulty. My foundation was cracked. So he had to strip everything and do a complete demolition and rebuild me from the ground up. And once I recognized that, in retrospect, I could see that God had never left me. God had not forgotten me, but he cared enough about me that he saw the road and the path that I was traveling on, and he had to bring it to an abrupt halt, completely strip it away, and rebuild me to the plans that he had for me underneath his blueprint. And I'm so grateful to God that his blueprint was far beyond anything that I could ever imagine for myself, because I was content in living a life that was simply going to work, being someone's partner in life, being someone's mother, being someone's daughter, being someone's friend, and not have anything left at the end of the day for myself, and literally wake up and do it all over again. But because God saw more in me that he wanted to pull out of me, he loved me enough to pluck me from the contentment that I was in and raise up and activate the promise that was within me. And from that situation, I was able to find that my calling was not only to come out of it and give God the glory for delivering me, but to recognize and see those signs in other people and let them know who God is and what a light that he is, and help to bring them out of that depressive state as well. So I counted all joy that I came out of it. And as I came out of it, I was able to birth the Bounce Back Advocate. And the Bounce Back Advocate is my nonprofit, and it is who I am, just stating that I believe in the comeback story, that there is nothing that you can go through in life, no circumstance that you can endure, that you cannot bounce back from, that you cannot be delivered from, whether it be depression, oppression, financial challenges, drugs, abuse of your body in other ways, toxic relationships. There is literally nothing that life can throw at you that you cannot overcome as long as you change your mindset, as long as you connect to God, and as long as if you are in that state where you recognize that you are not yourself or you are a shell of a person, that you can also seek licensed help, because God gives us tools and resources. And that can also come in the form of someone who is licensed to be able to help us to see things that we cannot see from ourselves when we become so detached from reality. So I am just so glad to share with you today. I have come up with my 10 tips for bouncing back as a result of that fight that I was able to overcome and triumph with mental illness. And I use those 10 tips in order to help other people to this day to be able to come out of it as well.
Amen. Story as well, the testimony, the power of God, power of prayer, and also through mental health um, counseling, therapy sessions. We serve a mighty God, and I'm going to come back and ask some questions once we get everyone on. But we thank you so much for sharing. I want to at this time welcome Miss Kia Glover to our discussion this morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. Go ahead and introduce yourself and share with us for a few moments.
Okay. Hello. My name is Kaya, and I am a therapist. But before I became a therapist, I had my own struggles with mental health, starting around 12, suicidal at 12 years old. I really didn't speak out about that much until I began having opportunities to speak in the community about mental health. And so the challenges continued. Um, I'm pretty sure I had anxiety before college, but my first panic attack was freshman year of college. And I was like, what is this? And it's kind of continued throughout all of that. My most recent of being suicidal was 2016, I think, somewhere around there. And it was only being able to call out to God that saved me that night. I was frustrated. I was fed up. I felt that I had no support, that my family was against me, and just lost. I was also in a relationship that was very toxic and caused a lot of different issues. And just very much so at the bottom. I was already blogging at that point, but then started to take more of a mental health aspect on the blog. And so then it just kind of grew from there. I am very passionate about it. I share with people, it's difficult being a therapist and dealing with mental health, because a lot of times the devil will try to use that and get into your head like, how are you going to help somebody else if you're dealing with these issues? But I just rebuttal it saying these issues help me to connect with my clients, because I'm not just coming from you from what I learned in a book, but I'm coming to you with what I've experienced myself. And just kind of like what Lauren was saying, that God uses us too. And so when I get the opportunity to speak, in areas like this, I always share that is, in the church, we believe, oh, God can use this person to pay my bills. God can use this person to supply these other needs, but he can use us who are licensed, who have gotten trained, for whatever reason, we're okay with getting counseling from the pastor, but not so much with someone who has actually gone to school to learn about how your brain and your body functions and how your environment plays a role and all of these different things. And so, I believe that God uses us the same way that he uses other people to meet other needs. Um, so specifically with prayer, a lot of times, I was at a point where I felt like I couldn't pray, that I was too low. I didn't know what to pray, but being able to know and have that foundation of call the name of Jesus. Um, there's been so many times, even that last night, I went to church the next day. I don't know that anybody noticed how low I was, to be honest. And I think it's important for people in the church to learn what those signs and things are to help those around them. A couple people noticed that, okay, Kai, you're not in your usual heels, you don't have no makeup on, what's going on, that kind of thing, but had absolutely no clue that my life was almost ended the night before. And so I think that's important that we can't just pass the buck. We can't go around, oh, did you see how she looked when she came in here today? But really being sincere about the relationships around us and knowing those signs when someone needs help and helping them to get it. You might not know what to say. You might not be a therapist, but even just supporting them and saying, okay, I'm with you, let's search for you a therapist, let's do this. And just knowing that someone is with you and cares and is willing to stand by you, I think makes a huge, huge difference.
I would absolutely agree with that. It makes a difference when you feel as if you have and know as if you have someone by your side and with you as you are going through life situations and life problems, vicissitudes of life. It makes a difference when you have someone there to encourage you. Just before we bring Paula on, I can attest to the fact never really have had no type of issues when it comes to mental health prior to, but earlier in the year, I was severely sick, severely ill, and the medicine that I was prescribed somehow or another had some type of negative effect on my mental um, capacity. And began hallucinating, felt detached from reality. Um, and I live in Los Angeles, and can't testify to St. Louis. And I've been to St. Louis, and I've been in parts of the South, Texas, Alabama. But in Los Angeles, the homeless population is very high. So I said that to say, there as walk past people all day long that don't know their own name, that's talking to themselves, having conversations with themselves, your mind just gone. And so I understand it to be a real thing. I've in the church, I mean, there are individuals that we have kind of dismissed, or that's just whoever, we've accepted them for who they are. But truth for the matter is they got some mental health issues. So, I know it to be a real thing. And, it's not something I wanted to play with. I immediately, I couldn't figure out what it was, why I felt like I was dreaming, why I felt like I was detached from reality, why nothing seemed real, why, I had to question if stuff was really happening, really going on. It seemed like I was hallucinating. And, it just hit me out of the clear blue, this is a side effect to this medicine. So and usually I'm not the kind of person that just takes medicine to take it. I usually look into it, but I was so sick and tired of being sick that I didn't even take the time to look into it. I just took the medicine, and when it came say for at least 2 weeks or maybe even longer. Ended up going to the hospital 2 or 3 times for it. And, nothing that they could really do or say or treat me for. They just, agreed to or acknowledge that it was a side effect of the medicine. But I'm grateful and so grateful to God for a village. And I said that to say for having a village, a community that, refused to just accept that and allow that to be my new norm. And I'm grateful for the power of prayer that would not allow me to just accept what, was my norm at the time. One, I said, now, wait a minute, God, you called me, and I know I can't effectively do your work and what you called me to do, having, all of these type of experiences and issues. I need you to help me on out here and bring me through this and out of this. So I'm grateful for your testimonies as to the power of God, and also taking therapy seriously. Sometimes, and I've been to therapy for some things, and you know what? It seems like the therapist, and this is no reflection on anybody, it seems like the therapist wasn't really saying much, telling me what to do or what have you, but it was something about just being able to talk to the therapist, judgment free, express myself, to someone the things that I've never candidly said or expressed to anybody. And talking through that, it made a difference. So, I'm grateful for it. I appreciate it. Enough about me. Let's bring Paula Sun on this morning to join us, and she's going to introduce herself and share for a few moments, and then we're going to get into some dialogue.
Well, hello, and thank you for having me, Elder Cooper. Ladies, I enjoyed your testimonies. Let me share a little bit about myself. I am Paula Sun. I am a licensed evangelist in the Grand Old Church of God in Christ, but I am also a licensed clinical pastoral counselor. I understand that that is different from a professional counselor. Christian counseling is slightly different. Our ethics and things are different than those in the secular world. However, I have over 10 years of experience as a mental health clinician dealing with adolescents, specifically adolescents who have been adjudicated. So I dealt specifically with males who were in prison, as you would say, some of them serving juvenile life. So they had charges ranging from armed robbery to murder. I had all of these kids on my caseload. From there, I worked with parents. So I went into the homes, worked with parents to try and teach them strategies on how to discipline their kids, how to keep their kids from being in the system. And what I learned in that experience, I learned one thing. A lot of times in church, you can find yourself being judgmental. You can find yourself not understanding why people do certain things they do, or looking at them as though they are less because they don't handle things in a different way. What I learned working inside the home, the one thing I took away was how people respond, how people behave is normal to them. That's what they know. That's what they've come to learn. It's normal to them. My job was simply to go in and add some skills to what they considered normal. Okay. So my job was not to go in and be judgmental. My job was not to tell them this, that, and the other. I'm just trying to give you some skills that you can utilize that will hopefully have a different result, which is your child not being in jail. From there, I did psychological assessments that were ordered from the judge. So I did psychological assessments. I assessed still adolescents. I had one kid as young as 9 years old coming in for psychological assessments. And that was probably the most grueling experience I ever experienced in my life, because what we do know as mental health clinicians is diagnoses. So that was probably one of the most, sitting in front of a 9-year-old and seeing and feeling everything in that moment. You know, I could tell that if God didn't heal him, because you could tell that it was some stuff going on in the brain, some connectors that weren't connecting, that was causing him to do certain things because he could not feel pain. And I'll leave it at that. From there, I worked as a mental health professional, and I worked with adults for a little while. I remember having one specific client. Um, she was suicidal, so I had to actually go with her to the hospital. I had to admit her. I had to call my bosses. Hey, this is what's going on. She needs to be admitted. She got admitted to the hospital, and I shared this as a testimony because, you know, I knew as a mental health professional, you cannot mix religion and faith with professional mental health, you know, therapy. Unless they open the door, then you can say something here or there. Well, this one woman, she told me that she had problems forgiving because of some trauma in the past. Well, when she got in the hospital and was placed on suicide watch, she said she got so tired because they would come in and they would check her room every 5 minutes, every 5 minutes, every 5 minutes. And what I realized that God allows me to do, he allows me to experience the pain that the other people feel sometimes when I'm uh, working with them. And so I remember specifically experiencing, it was like a noise that was in my head, almost like a train and the whistles blowing. It was just a constant noise. It was a constant noise. And I'm like, God, what is this?
All right. Seems like we have lost Paula, unfortunately. Hopefully we can get her back. You're back. That was a quick answer prayer.
So I was like, God, what is this from? And what happened, the lady said she was in the hospital, and because she was so happy to tell me about, you know, what happened to her. She was like, Miss Paula, here's what happened. I was in that hospital and I was sitting there and there was so much noise in my head. She said, and I stopped and I prayed and I said, Lord, if you can just stop the noise, I'll be able to tell you what you can tell me what's going on with me. She said, in that moment, the noise stopped. The noise stopped. All the voices and everything she was hearing, it all stopped. She was able to hear God. She said, and God told her, you need to forgive. She said, in that moment, she cried out to God. And she said, and our nurses, I'm not suicidal anymore. I'm ready to go home. She said, and they released her, but she was so happy that in that moment to experience God just silence all of the voices and answer her prayers in that moment. Then fast forward to Texas. I worked with runaways. I worked with young ladies who had experienced severe trauma. So young ladies in the sex industry who've been trafficked, who were being pimped out on serious drugs. So that's my history. Like I said, I'm also a licensed evangelist. So my approach to certain things is a little different because my understanding of the power of God is true and real. Now, I was married for 19 years and I got divorced.
All right. Yes.
I was married for 19 years, and before I got divorced, I stepped away from mental health counseling. I stepped away because I had gotten burned out. I stepped away. So you can imagine, after being married for 19 years, your life changed. Everything is just different. Okay. So I went through a period of therapy, had my own therapist to work through some problems, some issues that I didn't even know existed within myself. And that was probably um, one of the most empowering things that I could have done. I believe in prayer. I'm a prayer warrior. But like everybody is saying, it is okay to talk to a professional who is skilled, who knows. And Algernon, to help you understand, a therapist won't tell you what to do. If a therapist is telling you what to do, the therapist is working harder than you. The therapist is working harder than you. You have to put in the work. So I said all of that to say that, and I don't know if I should keep going with this, but mental illness has been demonized in the church. It has been demonized in the church. When people have mental health issues, we've said that they are demon possessed, because in the Bible, it's not addressed as mental illness. It's addressed as demon possession. So a lot of times in church, what I've come to understand is what we don't understand, demonic. And the problem with mental health, the problem with mental illness is that we cannot see where, all right? We cannot see. I say it all the time. If I break my arm,
I'm assuming she's going to say, if you break your arm, that's something that's visible. But the issue that we have with mental illness is that, it's something that we cannot see. I was trying to finish that up for you. I'm assuming that's what you were saying. We can see a broken, okay. We can't see.
We can see let it over here. We can see a broken bone. We cannot see where emotions are hurt. So if I have a cast on and my arm is broke, people are not going to come touch my cast because they know it's a hurt spot. But if I'm hurting mentally or emotionally, people don't know. And so they will touch it unknowingly. And then what they will see the symptom, which is the behavior of touching a hurt place. And a lot of times we address behaviors. We address what we see and not understanding that there is a root to the symptom of what we are seeing. Well, I'll stop right there for now, and I'll let you take over.
Wow, you said a mouthful, which has prompted me to just jump right into some questions here. Kai, I'm going to start with you. How would you sum up, or for someone that's watching, how would you help them to understand what mental health is?
Well, I explained that mental health and mental wellness are kind of different. So a lot of times we describe mental health as the negative, but it's kind of like with your physical health, that health is just your health, whether it's good or bad. And so basically, if it's on the negative side, then it may be, what Lauren was describing, in not being able to get up, isolating yourself. And those are symptoms of depression. There are several other disorders that could be happening. But typically when you hear mental health, we're talking about the negative, right? So anything that is impacting your functioning, just like she was saying that she wasn't able to care for her children appropriately or even herself, that is a sign that maybe your mental health is not in the right place and that you should probably seek professional help. Um, I also like to put in that as Black people, a lot of times our symptoms don't necessarily show up the same way because we're raised to be strong, that we can't miss work, that we have to get up, we have to shower, we have to do all those things. And those are drilled into us from such a young age. A lot of times we're still doing that. And I've called that functional depression. We're still doing all of those things, but we're distracted, we're not effective, we're irritable, different things like that, that it shows up in our lives because we're just raised like, no, you can't give those, like, you can't let those things get you to where you're not going to work. You got a job to do. Those people don't care about your mental health. You better get up and go to work. And I was having the same experiences, like, I don't feel like getting out of bed, but I know that I have to. I'm on my own. I am, I have to pay these bills. Ain't nobody else paying them. So I have to get up and do this. But when I get there, popping off at the mouth, just different ways that it was showing up, or I was down, I was drowsy, I wasn't getting things done. So when we talk about mental health, that's what it is. It is when your mind, your emotions are impacting your ability to function in the areas that you need to. And that's typically where diagnosing starts.
Okay. This next question, I'll direct it to Evangelist Paula. Being that you are a licensed evangelist, now I will say that me and the Good Evangelist, we have history together. We have co-hosted a conference together back in many moons ago in 2012, I believe it was. And she is a great preacher and knows how to approach the text and all of that. Being that you are an evangelist, how is it that you are able to differentiate or know the difference between a situation that may be spiritual and one that's mental?
You said between one that's mental and one that's what?
Spiritual.
I'm sorry.
Spiritual.
Spiritual.
Yes.
Huh. That's a good question. Sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you don't know unless you spend time with a person. When I say spend time talking to the person, a lot of times you'll know the difference from talking and communicating. And sometimes it can be revealed to you in the moment, but then sometimes it's revealed over time. And we have to just be very, very compassionate.
All right. I have another question I'll direct towards Lauren. Why do you believe that we shun mental health so much as praying and believing people?
I feel like it's because we are afraid to attack the root of the problem and to acknowledge a lot of times where it comes from. Like I said, for me, it stemmed as a child. So a lot of times in the Black community, we think it's taboo to attack those issues that are happening to our children, whether it be sexual abuse, whether it be a lack of having both parents in the home and the effects that can come from that. We don't really want to take ownership of those things because it's embarrassing and it can be shameful. So we just want to make sure to put on a brave face. And in order for us to get to the root of the problem and to fix it, we have to begin to normalize the conversation and figure out where are these feelings coming from in our community and how we can change them for the better for each generation to come. Because as long as we continue to hide behind the veil of shame and embarrassment and everything that happens in the house stays in the house, then it's going to continue to get worse and worse to where we have these patterns where we have to cover things up instead of deal with with them. And I think that's where a lot of the suicide in our community with our spiritual leaders is coming from as well, because we don't want to expose the fact that it's okay to not be okay and it's okay to be human. We just want to keep the cloak of spirituality over it and just think that everything can simply be prayed away without any work being done on the back end.
Wow. That's powerful. You know, Paula, you back with us. If you'll continue your answer, ask how do you know the difference between that which is spiritual and that which may consist of being a mental health issue?
Again, as I was saying, I think unless God reveals it to you in that moment, you don't know. You oftentimes we only find out things through talking, through conversations, through having, conversations with people and understanding. And what I've come to realize, I'm a part of this great church, but what I've come to realize is we've taught people how to attack symptoms and behaviors and not be patient enough to get to the root of the problem. The truth of the matter is, a lot of people who turn to God, a lot of people who are in
Boy, we don't the enemy don't want this good information to get to be discussed today. However, we're going to keep pushing, and we're going to pray that our sister's connection get a little stronger. But it's crazy. Something was said that was so powerful. We're taught how to attack symptoms and behaviors. The root of it. We have to be so careful that we're fruit killers and inspectors, but often
that's what it's connected to, because I'm on this video. That's what I need to hear.
We don't dig deeper to get to the place of figuring out, what the root is or what's causing, these behaviors, these symptoms that we are experiencing. That's powerful. Would you say those of all of you have shared your own personal stories of situations that led you to counseling and professional help? Would you say that during that time that you experienced perhaps being ostracized or criticized or looked at differently by individuals in the church or individuals that are spiritual that you know in your circles of influence? Anyone?
Absolutely. There was definitely a stigma attached to my situation at first, as though I was quote unquote playing crazy, or I was quote unquote wanting to get this medication to be doped up or to take a vacation from reality. So it's definitely something where that's a reason why a lot of people don't open up and say that they are receiving therapy and psychiatric help. I had an outpatient program that I attended that was for a couple of days. And then I also had a group session with other people that were experiencing the same things. And then I also had one-on-one. So during that process, it was definitely hard for people around me who are spiritual to understand and conceive why a person would leave their children for a couple of days to go into a place like this. And they perceived it as if I was in white padded walls and I had all of the restrictions on me and I was locked down. And it's definitely nothing like that. It's almost as normal as you and I sitting having this conversation, but it's just people sharing their different experiences and what they've been through and their coping mechanisms. But yes, for people who don't understand, they look at it from a different perspective, as if something is wrong with you for seeking help. And I honestly think the opposite. I think that it's more wrong for you to know that you have an issue and not try to attack it and not try to get better.
You, Ms. Clover?
Fortunately, no, I did not have that backlash or anything like that. I also I'm a very private person. Didn't really tell a lot of people I think the only person I told before I went was my sister. And so she was there. I was extremely nervous, and and it was crazy because I was already a therapist once I started therapy. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this. It was like, Kaya, you do this every day, just on the other side. But Lauren, I'm really sorry to hear that, because you're so right. Like, it is worse to not go through and do what you need to do, because if you would have continued down that road and not being able to take care of your children, they would have had something to say about that too. And really, you could have lost your children at that point, in not being able to effectively care for them. And so I'm glad that you didn't listen and that you went ahead and got the help that you needed, because I mean, it's just sad to see um, and hear the things that people will do and say, not knowing how much of an impact that has on someone. So I'm grateful that I did hear things when I was younger. Black people don't go to therapy, and oh, that's a white issue. Only white people commit suicide, things like that. So I heard that a lot growing up. But when I decided to kind of do things for myself, there weren't many things said, but those things definitely had an impact in me deciding to go into this field, and also doing like community education and things like that, because we do hear a lot of that. Black people looking at it as being crazy, and that's definitely not what it is. So when it came to really my personal experience, not really, but growing up and the people shaping my view of it, I kind of had to fight through those things a little bit.
Wow. That's interesting. And you kind of said it, and Paula said it as well. Being a therapist, and then having to go to therapy. Did you feel at any moment that there was something wrong with that picture, or uncomfortable in doing that, or did you run to it with open arms?
Definitely didn't run to it with open arms. I knew that it was something I needed to do. But I was having panic attacks the whole way, and on the phone with my sister, like, I cannot do this. She's like, yes, you can, keep driving, go. And, definitely before, in having depression and things like that, a lot of times the enemy will get in your ear and say, you're a therapist. How are you going to help these other people when you're sitting here depressed yourself? But really, God used me being able to talk to others to pull me out, because it was like all my problems fell to the side. I might cry again once our session is done, but in this moment, it's about this client that's in front of me. And God used that to strengthen me, because as the day went on and I talked to more clients, I felt a little bit stronger. And so absolutely, it was hard, and to have to fall back into that other spot, like, okay, what's getting ready to happen? But it was very, very good for me.
Wow, that's good. So, Evangelist, how would you recommend, or how does one approach prayer when it comes to praying for something that is considered to be a mental health issue? Do you waste time, or for lack of a better term, in praying for that, or how do you approach that situation?
No, you don't waste time in praying for that, because what you have to understand is, just like mental health issues are real, physical health issues are real. So if I can labor and pray for someone who has diabetes, who has cancer, who has arthritis, who has back pain, stomach pain, migraines, all of this, I can use that same energy and labor in prayer for the person who is experiencing anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, impulsive disorders, addictive behaviors. I use that same energy. Again, I'm going back to the church. We've addressed symptoms so long, and we have not taken the time to understand that you can't demonize everything. We've addressed the symptoms and the behaviors that we see. And I've been in services where people told people, stop taking that medication that they have put you on, if you're depressed or something like that. Here's my challenge. You're not going to tell me to stop taking my high blood pressure medicine. You're not going to tell me to do that. And I have high blood pressure. So if I stop taking that medicine, there are certain things that's going to happen to me. So we have been irresponsible with the rhetoric, with the words that have come out of my mouth, out of our mouth, out of ignorance, out of not understanding, mental health, and out of not understanding how to deal with it, how to address it, simply because we haven't gone through it, or simply because, again, when it is addressed in the Bible, it is demonized. I'll give you a few examples in the Bible. You have the example of when Job's wife said, curse God and die. Everybody demonized her for saying that. Even Job said, you sound like a foolish woman. But when you read the context, you have to understand, God never said anything about Job's wife. He said that Job was upright. What people have to understand, when Job lost his 10 children, lost all of his cattle, everything that he had, that was his wife's as well. So can you imagine a grieving mother who just lost 10 children and everything? And what is there to live for at this point? All right. Then we have another example of Elijah. We know when Elijah had all of these experiences, and then when Jezebel threatens to kill him, Elijah runs and he goes and hides. Well, what we don't realize is Elijah was a loner. Let's address that. Elijah was a loner, and he did some amazing things through the power of God. But he was a loner. So yes, he retreated. Yes, he got depressed because he was afraid. I mean, but we make it seem like, oh, he shouldn't have felt that way. How can you tell me how I should feel? You don't have the authority to tell me how I should feel, how I process information, how information impacts me. You can't tell me how to deal with trauma. Trauma affects the brain. And for so long in the church, we don't understand. When we read the Bible, these are stories for us to understand.
Hello.
Then there are situations in the Bible. Oh my gosh, my eye is doing something. Where we read the story where the man who was possessed with devils, and Jesus cast the devils into the swine, and the Bible later comes back and says he was sitting there clothed and in his right mind. In his right mind. And that's why we think mental illness is associated with demon possession, because of that statement made after the demons were cast out. He was clothed and he was possessed with devils, yes, but the Bible specifically says in his right mind. So what we have to understand is there are things that happen up here, and because we can't see it, we can't always call it demonic. Okay? We have to get to the root. We have to get past the symptoms. We have to sit there and look people in the eye. Because if you go to Acts, I want to say it's around chapter 3, I think, when the lame man sat at the gate beautiful and he was begging for alms. He sat there. So many church people walked past him during the hour of prayer. They walked past this man. They didn't see what the real need was. They saw symptoms. They saw behaviors. They saw him sitting there not being able to walk. They saw him sitting there begging. It was not until two people, Peter and John, stopped and they looked him in the eye And they were able to see beyond what he was asking for. And they said, look on us. That's what they said. Look on us. Look me in my eye, because I can see you may be crying out. You may be saying you're wanting a fix. You're wanting something to keep you in this position. But I have something that'll get you out of this position. But it didn't happen until somebody looked this man in the eye and saw beyond what he was asking for. They saw the need that he was not expressing. And we need more people in the church like that, who can see the need that people are not expressing, who can see the need like Sister Kia had when she went to church disheveled. Somebody should have seen, hey, we need to grab her. We need to talk to her. We need to find out what's going on. But unfortunately, we become selfish and we all go to church and we're looking for somebody minister to me, talk to me, give me a word, until we can't recognize what's going on around us. A lot of times I use conversation pieces. I use symptoms or behaviors as conversations, as a way to get a conversation started. If I see somebody with a whole lot of, how can I explain it? A lot of stuff going on with their body, I will sit there and ask them, what's the meaning behind that? And you'll be surprised at how people will talk to you when they find out that you are genuinely concerned. You're not sitting there trying to make judgment. You're concerned. You're just trying to understand. And I think in the church, we have to learn how to look past the symptoms, look past the behaviors, so that we can hear what people aren't articulating, because they've been trying to articulate it, but it's coming out in their behaviors. They've been trying to articulate it, but somebody's been ignoring them for a long time, and they don't feel safe articulating it. So the only way I can express it is through my behavior. You'll address that. That's all I have to say for now.
How can we build that safety?
How can we build that safety? It's more about having one-on-one conversations. Finding people in your, either if we're talking about church, finding people in your church who are qualified, who have the compassion to be able to have those conversations, to be able to show genuine concern. And a lot of time it's not going to be the pastor, because the pastor has so much other stuff to do. But there needs to be a team organized, a ministry organized specifically for this kind of stuff in churches. Since people are coming to church for help, there needs to be a ministry or an auxiliary or whatever you want to call it, set aside for the people who don't know how to articulate. But you can clearly see there's a problem.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was so interesting you brought up the young man that was possessed with a spirit, because the Bible tells us that the people drove him out of the city. And it's so crazy how dismissive we can be of individuals that have issues, that have some type of problem. We don't want to be bothered with them. We don't have the time. Charlie, nobody got time for that. I don't want to be bothered with it. They drove him out of town, and this young man found comfort in the graveyard. Nobody was bothering him, God forbid, in the graveyard. He found solace amongst dead things. And, he was howling. He was as a wolf or whatever, as a beast howling, cutting himself, exposing himself. They're just a powerful story. And then even what you said about Job's wife, and was talking, and that was the only person that escaped to tell it. Here come another messenger. So it was bad news on top of bad news. And we talk about her cursing God, telling or recommending Job to curse God and die, but that was her truth in that moment. That was how she really felt. That was her, expressions. She felt as if she didn't have anything else to live for. Um, that was powerful. Those of you that are watching, those of you that have questions, please ask them. We're going to answer some of your questions at this time, and we're going to slowly wrap it up. A comment here rather says everyone is not equipped to deal with certain issues. That's why it was never addressed back in the day. I would say even that, and even the knowledge base, did not extend that far back then. Our understanding was, everything that wasn't God was a devil. It was demonic. That's why some of us grew up in the house. We had sleeping demons, walking demons, talking demons. Everything was a demon. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. What as we're waiting on some questions to come through, ladies, what do you suggest that we do moving forward to promote more of these conversations, to promote more education on mental health? How is it that we can develop and or have a balance between prayer and mental health, or even get to the place where we bind together and pray for those that do have mental health issues, and we pray appropriately, and we're not just dismissive in our prayer? I know that's a loaded question, but
I'll say number one, having these kinds of conversations and getting to a point of being open with that. I'm so glad that our church is one that has developed a team the way the evangelist was talking about. And so we've been able to have conferences and things like that where we say, hey, we are here if you need help. And also, the compassion, the love, and understanding. Does the love of Christ dismiss people like that? No, he doesn't. When we go to him with all kinds of things, we don't want anybody else in the church to know, God, help me with this. Then does he shun us? No, he doesn't. And if we're supposed to love like him, then we are supposed to show the same love to his people. And it's not qualified by what they come to us with. It doesn't say, okay, as long as they're not addicted to cocaine, then love them,
right.
Show them compassion, understand. Because even those hard issues, it comes from something else. Just like she was saying, it comes out in behaviors and things like that. So I think number one, probably love is the number one thing. Loving people with the love of Christ, and then having conversations. We're not supposed to be judging each other. And that's a number one reason why people end up leaving the church, is because they feel judged, like they don't belong. And that's not the way that Christ is. So that's not how we're supposed to be. So I think with those couple things, and actually trying to get an understanding of, okay, how does this affect people? What does that really look like? Why is this person behaving, in this way and coming that way, instead of, oh, they're just crazy, And so those are the couple of things that I think are most important.
And I think also, along with what you ladies both said, I like how, Paula, you mentioned creating a ministry surrounding that, an outreach ministry that can provide resources and can provide tools and make the conversation normalized. And I like how you said, starting with love, Kaya. You have to embrace. Another piece to add into that, I feel like, is being transparent, is letting people know what you've been through, what you've overcome. Even if it's someone that who's overcome, just letting people know that, hey, I understand how you feel. I understand where you've come from, but I've had those same feelings, or someone I know has had those same feelings. It does not make you crazy. There's nothing wrong with you. We just need to take steps A, B, and C, and you can come out on the other side. Because in order for me to open up, I know it took somebody being able to open up to me first and kind of let me know, okay, there's a commonality here, or I can feel safe because this person is not going to judge me. This person is not going to run and gossip all over the church. This person is not going to be biased towards me because they have an understanding of where I am, and they can help me get to a much better place. So I think just letting people know you're human, sharing your experiences that you've been through, the thoughts that you may have had and how you've overcome and how you've gotten over, and removing the condemnation out of it. Because there's way too much of that fear of, if I say, then they'll take my position away from me, because they won't find me qualified to lead over this group or lead over that group because I'm confessing to them of thoughts I'm having. And I feel like that pressure is why some leaders have succumbed to it, because they felt as though if they were to come out and say how they were feeling and say how they were thinking, then they would be asked to step down. I know there was one pastor who actually came out and said he was going to go on a sabbatical. Like, he acknowledged that I need to take this break. And so many people across the country just responded to that in such a negative way that this pastor would get up in front of his parishioners and say that I'm going to take a sabbatical to work on me. But I felt like he was the most strong, triumphant, brave, powerful leader that I've ever seen in that moment, to be able to acknowledge, I cannot pour into you, I cannot lead you in the state that I'm in. So love, creating resources, giving tools, acknowledgement of it, and transparency.
Amen.
That was really good, both of you ladies. And love is the principal thing. Love is the driving force. Lauren, you said something. You said you were only able to open up when somebody opened up to you and was honest with you about what they had been through. And it brought me back to the same story of Peter and John with the man. When they said, silver and gold have I none, they were letting him know, we don't have money. Just like you're asking for money and you don't have it, we don't have it either. But I'm going to give you what I do have that is valuable. Another thing that I think we should push is, we talk about, we go and have our physical checkups every year, our health and wellness checkups at the doctors. If nothing is wrong with us throughout the year, we at least have one appointment every year to make sure everything is okay. I think we need to implement that when it comes to mental health and sitting with a therapist at least once a year as a checkup to see how everything is doing. And then when you come to life-changing moments, you're able to go right back there, because I'm not going to go to the doctor if I'm not sick. If nothing major is happening, there are some things that I know how to take care of at home. But if something major is happening, then I'll go to the doctor, even though I've already had a wellness check. So with what we are facing right now, this pandemic, this job loss, all of this, people need to be talking to qualified professionals. People need to be seeking out help. I lost my job during this pandemic. Things changed for me drastically, knowing that you can't go outside, you can't maneuver and things like that. That is weighing on the psyche of people. And what we need to realize is that we need to talk about it. Things that I've done during this time now, I journal every morning. I go for a walk to try to clear my head. These are ways that I use to cope and make sure I'm okay. But I do think we need to push for people to at least go talk to somebody at least once a year. If nothing's going on, once a year, to make sure, okay, I'm good, or I'm not good, or maybe I need to follow up. Because, when you go to a regular doctor and they look at your numbers from year to year, and if something has changed, they want you to follow up. They want you to do some more lab work because something's not looking right. And so if you're seeing a mental health professional at least once a year, they can figure out when something's not looking right. they can say, okay, we need to start treatment and address some of this right here before we have this huge problem, because it's really all about preventative care. And so before we get to a place where there's a huge problem, we need to be in a place where we are honest, transparent, and just talking about what we're feeling, what's going on with us, but it has to be a safe place.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. There's a question on the floor, I would say. And those of you that have questions, again, go ahead and type your questions, and we will have our panelists to answer. This question says, some people, or some members rather, in the church, they don't care about other people who need help. So what does the person in the church do in order to get help? The church is supposed to be a hospital.
You might have to go outside the church. If you feel that the members around you are not being supportive, then you might have to go outside of the church. And I mean, it's terrible that it has to be that way sometimes, but now, especially online, there's been a huge influx of therapists doing teletherapy and resources online and things like that. But even outside of that, there are different websites and things like that. If you need direction in finding a therapist or finding different resources, and so, yeah, you might have to go outside of there and reach out to get the help that you need.
I know one good major resource is the National Alliance of Mental Illness, NAMI, NAMI. So if you go to their website, they have local chapters, and they can definitely provide you with resources in your local area, hotlines you can call, tips and best practices, things like that.
Amen. Wonderful. Are there any other questions? Submit those questions. Yes, I absolutely agree. It was said that we should have an annual checkup to check on our mental capacity. I believe that is phenomenal to do, and it's so needed in this time, especially with everything that is going on. We have endured a lot. Just think of the added stress, the added pressure that we're under because of all that's going on. Some have lost their jobs. Some have had their salaries reduced. Some are having to work more. Some are not working at all. And so, there's an added stress, there's added pressure there. So it is good wisdom to go and to have a checkup, even if it's reaching outside of your particular church. And unfortunately, every church is not at the place as of now of being properly staffed, or even have the mind to have a department, auxiliary, a small group or something for a mental health check-in or what have you, or that type of ministry. So it's no harm in looking at resources outside of your church that will help benefit you. At the end of the day, it's your mind, it's your mental capacity, it's your health. So you have to be willing. It just came to my mind, you wouldn't sit around having heart trouble, heart pains, and heart conditions, talking about you waiting for somebody at the church to come and look at you and check you. In the same way, we would go to a physician. So we take everything to God in prayer. But even when Jesus healed the lepers, he told them to go show themselves to the priest for him to certify their healing and their cleansing. So sisters and brothers, there is no harm. There's no foul in looking into and having your mental health checked and and seeing about another question, not question, it seems more of a comment, says you have to make sure that people are qualified to know how to handle or deal with people that has mental illness. Everyone is not qualified. A person can love you but not know how to. I know this because I am in this particular field. Yes, this woman of God works in that field, caring for those that have disabilities, mental and physical disabilities, more so mental in a lot of ways. So, you know, it does take being qualified. Do you think that people in the church should invest in being certified? There should be more individuals certified in this area?
I honestly feel like it's something that you have to be called towards or educated towards. But even if you are not, I don't want everybody to feel like that's the only way that you are skilled to help. Sometimes people just need an ear to listen. They don't need you to necessarily fix them. They just need you to be able to listen, to react to them compassionately without judging them, and to lead them in the right direction. So even if that is not your skill set or your calling, you can still very much impact a person. I have 3 people that helped me to come out of that dark place, and none of those 3 people were skilled in mental health, but they were a great supplement to the licensed help that I was receiving. So you can still be of use and you can still help if you aren't skilled in that capacity. I think that one of the biggest gems today that I appreciated of all the ones dropped was about that wellness check yearly, because mental issues lead to physical issues, overeating, malnourishing, headaches, stress, high blood pressure. So I definitely feel like that was an amazing thing that Paula said. And then in addition to that, yes, there are people that should be skilled if that is their gifting, their calling, and if they have the education. But it's not for everybody. So if it's not for you, that's okay. There are still ways that you can help.
Anyone like to add to that?
I absolutely agree. It is not for everybody. It is a tough thing to basically be taking on other people's problems. And if you don't have the mindset needed to really talk to them where they are, to listen to what they have to say, and know that you're being helpful and not more hurtful. You know, sure, there might be more people that are called to do that. But it's, like she said, it's not for everybody at all.
I agree with everything said. You really have to have a passion and a gift for this. I don't know if you all heard me, but I did say that I realized right before my divorce, I stepped away from all things mental health. I stepped away for 3 years. I did not try to counsel. Actually, whenever somebody would mention counseling to me, it was almost like I was traumatized. And I was like, no, I don't want to deal with anybody. I don't want to talk to anybody. I did that, but I also recognized that I was not in a place where I could help somebody. I understood that I was not in a place where I could help, that this was some time that I needed to step away and get myself together. I just recently reinstated my licensure, just recently. So we have to understand, like Miss Spearman was saying, how she applauded the pastor who said, I need to step away from this. I understood that I needed to step away because I could do more damage than helping during this time. So to answer the question, no, it's not for the faint at heart. It's not something that you just say, oh, I just want to go do this, because you will find yourself feeling it. feeling it, and it can be overwhelming and it can overtake you. So you have to know that this is your passion. You have to know that God has called you to it. He's gifted you for it, and then get the training that you need and the education that you need to be effective.
Absolutely. Wonderful. So we're going to wrap things up. I want to thank you ladies for your time today and for sharing such profound wisdom with us. I'm grateful, so grateful for you, your transparency, for opening up and even sharing personal stories, of your life and experience that have helped individuals that are watching. And want you to leave us with a last thought, a last word, a last um, uh, bit of information that you want the people to take away from today's dialogue. And after that, we will conclude.
Well, I want people to be encouraged to talk about it. I really wish that the stigma would be eliminated, but I want people to be encouraged and understand that they are not suffering alone. There's a song that says God wants to heal you everywhere you hurt. That's not just physical. He said he came to bind up the brokenhearted. That's the emotion. That's the emotional space. So I believe that God wants to heal us physically, but also emotionally. But we also have to understand that it's a continual process. It's a continual process. Sometimes we think that I go sit with a counselor today and I'm done. I'm healed. No, it's a continual process, and you have to be willing to put in the work. You have to be willing to work past the discomfort, because what you will realize going through therapy, there are going to be some uncomfortable places that get touched, but work past that in order to experience some health and some freedom.
Amen. I completely agree. If there is anything I can say to piggyback off of that, is the fact that yes, it is a continual process. Life is going to continue to create obstacles and throw curveballs. So don't think that, if you have a bad day or a relapse, that it's the end of the world. You can continue to progress forward, continue to implement your prayer life and your spiritual counsel, as well as licensed counsel from a licensed therapist. So just continue to know that there is nothing that you can go through that you cannot bounce back from, that you cannot restore yourself and continue to transform and continue to elevate and help people along the way. A lot of the times that I was giving advice to people, I was still in the thick of what I was going through. But that also gave me a unique perspective and a unique relatability. So continue to pursue your God-given calling regardless, and keep pressing forward.
Absolutely. And you know what? I had a question for you, Ms. Spearman, because you talked about, dealing with some of these issues at an early age. I am also very involved in youth ministry. How is it that we can, a lot of times, especially, in my earlier years, a lot of older individuals, older people would often say, you're just a child. You ain't going through nothing. You ain't, lived through anything. You haven't experienced anything yet. How is it that we can recognize and or see these signs in our young people, knowing that they too suffer from some of these issues, even at a young age?
Absolutely. They are dealing with more things than we ever had to, that are actually being brought to the forefront. We have children that are dealing with suicidal issues. There are children that are dealing with bullying, whether it be cyberbullying, whether it be in-person bullying. There are children that are dealing with abuse and neglect in their home. So I absolutely feel like we need to talk to these children and let them know that how they're feeling is okay. Do wellness checks with them. How are you doing today? How are you feeling? What happened to you at school today? Let them know that when they tell you things, they're not going to have a consequence of being in trouble, and that what they tell you is going to stay with you, unless you need to intervene in case they're in any type of danger. But definitely creating a safe space for them as well, because they are not wired to be as strong necessarily as we were growing up. So that's why the suicide rate for children is becoming so high. So definitely just acknowledging everything that they are going through and that they're facing, and letting them know that it is okay for them to confide in you, and that you will be able to help them get through the growing pains that they're going through.
Powerful. Thank you so much. Ms. Glover?
I will speak on that real quick because children are my specialty. And when I hear people say, "Oh, you don't pay no bills, what problems do you have?" It does something to me. I hate it because I've had 4-year-olds saying they want to commit suicide. 4. And you might think, well, what does a 4-year-old have to be worried about? But a lot of times we say things in front of them, they experience things and don't know how to talk about it. They don't, and we think, oh, they don't understand, they're young. But no, they see all of that. They hear it. Fathers and parents and all of that not being in the home, that affects them. Bullying at school. I worked in elementary schools as a therapist, and the bullying gets bad. The way that they talk about each other, the way that they deal with each other, even teachers sometimes can be a source of the issue. And so just listen to them, not being judgmental. Your bills are not your only issue. So just because they don't pay bills does not mean that they don't have stress and other things. Homework that's hard, self-esteem, all those different things are extremely important. And the younger that we start teaching them how to deal with these issues, the better off they will be in the long run. So I'm glad that got brought up. Also, Pamela, I see you. Reach out to me, please. I didn't mention this before, but my website is notesbykaya.com, and I do offer empowerment services, empowerment sessions, individual, working on more group things as well. You are not by yourself, and you shouldn't feel like you are. So please connect with me, and because I see what you're saying. But yeah, so that's it. And anyone else if you need to, because it really, like we mentioned earlier, makes a difference when you have a support system, you have someone that's cheering you on, helping you, pushing you. And like these shirts say that I have, Jesus plus therapy equals healing. It takes both to really heal. And it's all about bringing God into that, letting him move through you, through the people working with you, and then you will see healing. It's not one without the other, but it's both.
Amen. And Kaya just brought that something to my mind. Those you ladies, all of you are phenomenal. I know some of you are authors, some of you have are able to take advantage of that and or connect with you.
You kind of cut out for a second.
I said, I know you ladies, some of you are authors, some of you have businesses, programs, and different things of that nature. Share how those that are watching can connect with you and take advantage of what it is that you are offering.
Absolutely. I have my website is www.bouncebackadvocate.com. Again, that's www.bouncebackadvocate.com altogether. My Facebook is Lauren Spearman, my first and last name. I'm not sure if it's still on the screen, but Lauren Spearman. And then my Instagram is The Official Lauren. Altogether, The Official Lauren. So any of those avenues, my social media, you can inbox me. There's a contact button, or my website. You can reach out to me as well. There are pricing structures listed on the website. However, I don't turn down ministry. So please don't let that be a deterrent for you reaching out.
You can find me on social media on Facebook under Paula Sun, first and last name Paula Sun. I also have a website, but it needs to be updated. The website is www.paulasoncaldwell.com. I've written a book. It's called Finding the Yes in the No, a guide to overcoming rejection. It's a really easy book to read. It is based on scripture and prayer. So it's a really easy book to read, and I think it's really good for adolescents, teenagers, and whoever just has a problem dealing with a rejection, whoever has just been stunted by rejection. And you can find that on Amazon.com or Lulu.com or BarnesandNoble.com. Again, it's called Finding the Yes in the No.
Okay, and for me, once again, my website is www.notesbykaya.com. I am Notes by Kaya on all social media, and so you can reach out to me in that way. And like I said, I offer services, empowerment sessions individually. And so it's a little different than regular therapy services. I'm able to kind of bring more of the ministry part into it and what God has called me to do. So you can reach out to me in any of those ways.
Wonderful. Amen. Thank you so much, ladies, again for your time today and for sharing with us. I pray that those of you that have been viewing and watching and with us today have been blessed by that which these women of God have shared with us on this morning. It's morning here, but it's afternoon, I believe, where they are. So thank God for each and every one of you and for blessing us. I wish to express my sincere appreciation and thank you so much again for just sharing. So many wonderful things have been said. I do believe that the stigma that has come along with us as saints of God, believers, Christians, church-going folks, praying folks, that has been addressed as far as it comes to checking in on and caring about our mental health. And so, again, I'm grateful to each and every one of you for sharing. For those of you that are watching that have not already registered for this e-course, please do so. This is the completion of week number 2. Week number 1 was phenomenal. We discussed, Lord, teach us to pray as well as the basics of prayer. On the other night, or this week, we began week number 2, was talking about praying for answers. And today we discuss prayer and mental health. Or next week, we'll be discussing intercession as well as the principles of binding and loosing. And yours truly will be lecturing on Thursday night, and Pastor Latanya Blake Allen will be sharing with us on Saturday morning on the powers of the principles, rather, of binding and loosing. So you definitely want to be a part of that. There are some other phenomenal things that are going on in the ministry that I do just want to briefly make mention of. On tomorrow, tomorrow night. But before I get to tomorrow night, I must talk about tonight. Tonight at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we will be in dialogue talking about living in America, the Black experience. We will be discussing the recent murder of George Floyd and some of the other recent murders, unfortunately, of our Black individuals, our Black people in America. And we have some phenomenal panelists that will be with us. We have attorney Shamira Keener, Bishop Jawan Hilton, who is a council member, as well as Pastor Joshua Bingham. So you don't want to miss that tonight. 6:30 Pacific Standard Time, 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern. Then on tomorrow we will be celebrating Pentecost on tomorrow and Monday as well. Tomorrow at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, that's 10 Eastern, 10 Central, 11 Eastern. We will be praying for Pentecost, and on Monday we will be live from the sanctuary at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 Central, 8 Eastern, declaring a word from the Lord. So you don't want to miss it. Be sure to follow and like the ADLC Ministries page on Facebook. You can visit us on our website, and you can watch and stream from there as well, www.adlcministries.com. And you can view on YouTube as well, ADLC Ministries. Well, may God bless you. May God keep you is my prayer. And I look forward to joining you again on Thursday evening as we continue this e-course on prayer. May God bless you. May God keep you is my prayer. Take care.